Now welcome World Cup draw, Investec Champions Cup kickoff and Challenge Cup, Connacht and Ulster involved. And more besides to discuss. Happy to say, fresh from chatting to Andy Farrell at the Aviva Stadium is Rúaidhrí O'Connor. Hello.
Hey Joe.
And Ian Madigan with us as well. Ian, hey.
Hey Joe, Rod, how are we going?
Good.
All go today.
All go today. Our rugby coverage, as ever, sponsored by Energia. They sponsor rugby in Ireland at all levels, grassroots with the AIL. They're official energy partners as well to Leinster, Connacht, the Irish men's and women's teams. And they have a Rugby for All initiative, which welcomes everyone of all abilities to participate in the game. And if you want to learn more about Energia's exclusive home energy offer for rugby fans, you can visit energia.ie/rugby. Now, I'm not saying we're going to win the World Cup. So, World Cup draw 2027 made today, and once again, Scotland, our old friends, the third year in a row. I'm going to hate the build-up of this game. Why do we hate them? Why do they hate us? Yada, 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 yada. So, look, we'll beat Scotland. Uruguay, Portugal. And I suppose the interesting thing is that for being world number one team, for New Zealand being climbing up the rankings number two, they haven't been given any great reward because just being in the top six is the only differential. There's no benefit to being 1 versus 6, really. So France, South Africa and New Zealand, assuming things go as expected, so assuming New Zealand beat Australia on the opening night, and what an opening night that will be. But South Africa, New Zealand and France are all on the other side of the draw. So again, to predict far too much, and I appreciate that is the case from this vantage point, but let's do it nonetheless. If you were to go along how things might go, Ireland would be looking at a quarter-final against Argentina and then a semi-final against England. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. Well, that depends on New Zealand, Australia, who have really been handed the worst of all the draws, because if New Zealand win, it sets them on a collision course with South Africa in the quarter-final and Australia on a collision course with England. But if Australia win, which is not beyond the bounds on the opening night in a home tournament, that means Australia are on a collision course with South Africa in the quarter-final and New Zealand will be on the collision course with England and would come on to the side of the draw that Ireland are on. And the importance of beating Scotland, which I'm sure most people know at this stage, is that if you lose to Scotland, you're likely to be playing France in a round of 16 game. And what for all the jokes about how introducing a round of 16 will finally give Ireland the chance to win a knockout game for the first time, I'm not sure anyone's backing them against France in a one-off game in a round of 16.
Oh my God, what if we have a last 16 problem we don't even realise yet?
Yeah, well, they have played, it wasn't the last 16, but there was a quarter-final playoff in 1999 and they lost that to Argentina. So Ireland obviously have never won a knockout game, but that Scotland game and the two Scotland games between now and then have become everything. Yeah. So it's the only thing that matters right now, because the last 16 game will be a bit of a gimme, a warmer-upper for the... If you beat Scotland top the pool, you're playing against the third-ranked team from one of the other pools. So then you're looking at a one-off with Argentina, and obviously, you don't take that for granted at all, because Argentina, at the moment, if it was next week, I'd think Argentina win the game. Yeah. But, you have 2 years to prepare. And again, even, if you get through that and you've got England, I know England are getting a lot of good press at the moment, but they beat New Zealand at home, but they have a lot of things still to prove between now and then, and it's certainly not the most frightening draw. It's the best draw Ireland have probably ever been handed for a World Cup, which doesn't guarantee anything, but I think Andy Farrell would have, to use a Mick McCarthyism, he would have bitten your hand off for that when he woke up this morning.
Yeah. Ian?
Yeah, I'd echo large parts of that. Like, heading into the draw, I was very much looking at, well, who do we want to avoid first off? So in the tier 2, Fiji and Australia were two teams that I certainly thought were best avoiding. If we landed Scotland or Italy, I thought that was a good result. We've had Scotland's measure for the last 2-3 World Cup cycles. The win-loss record speaks for itself. Then, like, thinking further down, tier 3, tier 4, I'd still, like, while they're nothing on what they used to be, Samoa, Tonga are very physical games, and again are best avoided. And I thought that was a trap we probably fell into in the last World Cup, where we played our full strength team in nearly every game. I think it was Romania in round 1, where just the excitement of the World Cup, you want to put out your strong hand. We did rotate a little bit, but not enough. Similarly with the Tongan game, we a very strong team out. we blew Scotland away with very much our first strength team. And looking back on it, we fell flat when it really mattered against New Zealand at the start of the game and left ourselves a bit of a mountain to climb. It's an amazing draw. And when a draw is this good, you nearly look at it and go, is it too good? Are we going to be undercooked when it gets to Argentina, which is a concern. And I think back to the World Cup I played in 2015. The Argentinians had somewhat set a trap for us because we'd toured there the year before and beaten them relatively comfortably in Argentina in both tests. And the team we met in 2015 at the World Cup was very different to what we'd played. Similar personnel, but they performed a very different way. And similar to the New Zealand game, we got off to a really slow start and left ourselves a mountain to climb. Yeah. But look, as draws go, it's as good as it gets. Like, if you think what Rudd said, you want to avoid the two best teams for as long as possible. And the two best teams, I think, heading in will be South Africa and France. And having one of those two knock each other out is great news. And then potentially to have, third, fourth is probably New Zealand, England at the moment, in my opinion. Seeing New Zealand being knocked out by having one of New Zealand, France or South Africa left and us not having touched them, great result.
Jeez, you hear this? As good as it gets. This guy was given a Jamie Heaslip fist pump watching the draw at home. That's what I'm getting from
Never go full Jamie Heaslip.
Scott, come in!
But if you have an aging squad,
yeah,
this new format allows you probably to manage your players a little bit more, which I think is key to Ireland succeeding. The last 16, just looking at it, it's probably going to be Tonga, Samoa or Georgia, which is a good tune-up, but a game that, Ireland should come out the end of. Now, Tonga and Samoa will be dangerous, especially in Australia, because they'll be backed by a huge local population. They'll have more former All Blacks and possibly former Wallabies on board because it's a World Cup and the regulations have changed. But still, Ireland have a lot of work to do to be able to exploit this draw. No one's saying they're just going to have to turn up in their current form and get there. But I think this will give Farrell and his kind of leaders or whatever a lot of optimism and hope that they can probably still be managing themselves into the tournament, quite deep into it, before they have to peak. Obviously you got to take care of the business against Scotland or you could be gone by the last 16, but there's I think it takes even the Nienaber chat that we might be having later on, like South Africa are no longer even something we're thinking about. They're not going to see them until the final. So it just changes completely your picture for the next 2 years of what you have to do and what you have to achieve and who you have to beat. And while I wouldn't be optimistic about Ireland right now based on what I've seen over the last year or two, you kind of think even right now they could give a really good go with that draw. And if they make the improvements they're talking about making, just having talked to Doris and Farrell at a press conference in Aviva just now, well then they should be going to this, definitely thinking about semi-finals. If not, Andy Farrell's talking about winning it. I mean, he was never going to talk about anything else, but like that's the mission. Yeah. And they've got a chance. I'm not saying they're going to do it. I'm not saying they're going to turn up and just walk all the way there, but it's the best chance they'll ever get.
Well, I suppose in contrast to the 23 draw, which stopped everybody in their tracks, and it was always the cloud on the horizon, this is now a massive pick-me-up for a team that need a bit of a pick-me-up. You don't necessarily have to hit the levels you were at. I mean, not that you shouldn't aspire to, but you don't have to be the 2023 version here to have a very interesting World Cup. And my Scottish friends, I am just, it's joking. I mean, I'm actually not taking Scotland for granted. One of these days, like 11 runs and counting, they're going to spring a major shock. And 2 years away is an eternity. Who knows if Gregor Townsend's even the coach. But a massive pick-me-up, a sense of kind of, okay, right, everyone, if we get our act together here, I think that'll be the prevailing mood. Give us a bit more on what Farrell in particular and maybe Doris said at the Aviva.
Yeah, there wasn't, Andy Farrell doesn't give much away, and he certainly wasn't going to walk in and talk about the draw in the way that we're talking about the draw. I mean, he was even talking about how Uruguay and Portugal will be looking at it the same way as Ireland will, and you're just going, you roll your eyes, but he's just doing his job, and he can't be giving Scotland things to stick up on the dressing room wall because, I mean, he was asked, how would where would this rank in terms of your coaching career? What would it mean to you to win a quarter final and be the first coach? He says, I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about winning this. It's not. They're not. I still think it will be when we come down to it if they get that far. And maybe having won a last 16 will give them a bit of something, but if it is Argentina and they're widely expected to win it, even though Argentina are a very good team, the pressure will be on them. I think they can talk that away all they want. But yeah, they're excited as much as you can be about a tournament that's 2 years away.
Yeah.
There's a lot of water to go under the bridge between now and then, and teams can, if they continue in their own trajectory, then Scotland becomes a very difficult game. But yeah, they're confident they're going to pick it up. They're not as worried as maybe I am, and a lot of people are after November. They see the fixes. Farrell said he had a 2-hour meeting after the draw today, just start talking about logistics. Even though they don't know where they're going to be, they're already thinking about how they're going to build up to it, how many warm-up games they're going to play, all that sort of stuff. So I think it's given them a sense of purpose around it. So yeah, he wasn't given any massive headlines, but it was it's the only out of competition chance we get to talk to him at the same time. So it was good to check in with him about how he feels things are going, and he's not panicking.
Yeah, well, look, it's an eternity away, but because it's one of those funny things. Like if with that route they make it to a World Cup semi-final, and for instance we're soundly beaten by England or New Zealand, we won't be reflecting on, God, wasn't the 2027 World Cup an amazing achievement? Now there'll be such excitement. Like you can imagine the country if Ireland are counting down to a World Cup semi-final. It will be an amazing few days for sure. But like I said, if they lose, it's not like the team will come home to necessarily hear us welcome and we can't believe you won a quarter final. It won't be that.
They? It's about winning it, and Ireland have been number one for a long time.
Yeah.
It's 4 competitive windows
until.
So
what was Farrell as a kind of final word in all this? Did he have anything bitey or interesting to say about the November performances?
Not really. No. He was asked, I think it was the 3rd or 4th question, he was asked about it, and he said, "Are we finished talking about the World Cup already? We're moving on." And he kind of wanted to keep it into the future. He didn't really want to get it, but he was asked about it.
Is there any other questions on Portugal?
Yeah,
because they've no.
Yeah,
He knows.
He knows, and he doesn't like doing it. So there was nothing massively meaty apart from the fact that he
didn't say it wasn't good enough, that kind of thing.
No, right. But I think that's he knows that it's not, and he knows that there's things that they can improve on, but he thinks that they have it within them to do that. And there was a bit of a challenge laid out to kind of the players outside of the squad to kind of perform in the next 8 weeks to try and get in. Like things, he didn't mention names, but you're thinking like, say, Jude Postlewaite was amazing for Ulster at the weekend. He's someone who suddenly really could give Ireland some life. Edwin Adogbo, but he kept it between the ditches. He always does. Like he's such a safe communicator. I think sometimes he could benefit from a bit more in terms of trying to influence the way the game is being, the direction of travel and stuff, but he doesn't choose to do it that way. So he wasn't giving an awful lot away.
Okay.
One thing I'd say in it, Joe, that is going to make it very exciting. I was just actually trying to check the fixtures there for like the Nations Championship, which is going to be like the kind of competitive summer tour, Autumn Nations series, where it's competitive throughout, winners and losers, first place plays second place from north versus south, etc. Ireland are due to play Argentina in November, so that's going to really add a bit of spice to that fixture, and it's going to be competitive because they're going to be looking to finish as high up the rankings in that competition as possible. There's not without the realms that they could end up playing each other twice, because it could be if Ireland came second and Argentina came second, they'd face each other again in that 3rd, 4th place playoff. So it will make for a very exciting lead into it. Into
that 07 to 15 era felt like they were, nemesis and routine opponents, and it sort of ebbed away a touch.
Even 99,
99, of course,
Quinn and Adelaide.
Yeah, but the last few years, it's kind of just the teeth has gone out.
Well, Argentina largely arrive over in November. In the last couple of Novembers, they haven't really been great when they've come to Dublin because of the amount of games their team plays and all that sort of stuff. But they had a good November this year. They've had a good year.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The last trip to Dublin to beat the Lions. So
the last 2 World Cups, we've
managed to avoid them.
Yeah. Welcome back, old friends. Champions Cup then. So we are underway as of this weekend. 24 teams will compete for Europe's marquee competition. We will have 4 pools of 6. So in effect, 8 teams each from URC, Premiership and Top 14. That is the format these days. We only lose 8 teams through the pool stages. They've, I think, sacrificed largely, as we know at this stage, this side of Christmas. So when we get to round of 16, it does pick up massively. But, look, this is a well-trodden path. We don't have to get overly into it. I think it's well established. This competition isn't quite what it used to be, the heyday of the Sky era. And then there was TNT, and then frankly, the disastrous decision in many ways to go to market and away from TNT from a UK point of view, where not many people have Premier Sports, and so it's just not getting as many eyeballs on it as it once did. And then the pool stages, not least with the South African travel, we saw a glut of games with second string teams playing last season, and it was a big talking point this side of Christmas, and it will be much the same again. And I suppose within that road, you try and find the good games and you enjoy them, or you don't, and the tournament is doing okay-ish.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. I think you can do a lot of damage to yourself in the pool stages, but you obviously can't win the tournament. It's really a little bit like the World Cup. They've expanded to 24 teams, and the pool stages will suffer because there's a lot, big disparity between the top teams and the bottom teams. The EPC, the Champions Cup, we kind of know who's going to get to that round of 16. It's just in what order, because if you're look back on last year, one of the highlights of last year's tournament was Munster's win in La Rochelle, but because they'd finished so low in their pool, they had to go to La Rochelle in the round of 16, got a famous win. We're back in France a week later and got hammered well beaten by Bordeaux. And you're trying to avoid that scenario. You're trying to come as high up in your pool as possible to set yourself up for the knockouts. And that's why these games are very important. Launching a competition in December is just, you'd never design a tournament that way. It's just not it's real soft launch stuff. There's too much going on. It's hard for people to go to the away games. October was just, was before November Internationals. It built much more naturally. I remember arriving into Bristol last year for Leinster's opener. It was only a week after Ireland had played Australia. Half the Ireland team was on the bench for Leinster because they needed to be rested. The entire upper deck of the stadium wasn't full, or wasn't sold, because it was a late Sunday game, and Bristol had been lobbying hard for a Friday night game. They thought they could have sold it out, and the game wasn't. You couldn't even watch the game or the highlights in the stadium, because the stadium didn't have Premier Sports, because in England the TNT is the Premiership broadcaster, and it just felt very low key, very off Broadway. But there will be good games, and it's still very important, especially to the Irish teams. It's the two of them that are in it, I suppose. I mean, Munster have a really tough pool, and those 4 games I think will all be really worth watching.
Yeah.
And Leinster have a much easier run pre-Christmas, but have 2 really tough French games after Christmas. And I think Leinster are probably more interested. This is the most interesting pool stages we've seen from Leinster in an awful long time, because they've made such a bad start to the season. So I think this will be more appointment viewing, because really when Leinster were blasting their way through the pools, you kind of, it was a little bit, okay, we'll see in April when things get going. But are Leinster capable of winning all 4 and getting home advantage, which has been so important to them?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that they're going to get through that. So that makes it more interesting. And there'll be other narratives across the way as well. I know the Stormers, I chatted to John Dobson after Stormers Munster, they're going for this. The way it works, they're in Europe to start off with. They go to France next week. It just sits nicely for them. And they are saying, if we don't go after this, they're going to throw us out. We need to take this seriously, which is a good thing as well. So I still like it, but I see the flaws.
That's a good nuanced answer, and the way you framed the pool stages there is more interesting about what it means for later in the tournament, as opposed to will they make it through, when the vast majority will. Ian, you're kind of well placed. You are absolute rugby obsessive. I get the impression you watch every match going. You've played in this competition when it was absolutely pretty close to its pomp, and then you've played in Ireland, England, France. You've a sense of how those various countries interact with this tournament. Where do you think it is in 25? Where is it for you?
Yeah, loads in it, Joe. I think, starting off, I think Leo Cullen summed it up well. He was interviewed after the Dragons game, and he views the group stages as a seeding exercise. And, Rod, you touched on it there. Toulouse got caught out with that last year. They didn't get a bonus point win away to the Sharks. Bordeaux finished ahead of them in the seedings. That resulted in Toulouse having to play Toulon away. That's how, getting 19 points out of 20 available in the group stages, but not finishing high enough up in the seedings because they were in the same group as Bordeaux, but didn't play them because they're in the same league. The same way that Leinster don't play the URC teams in their group. So it is really important for a team like Leinster that you accumulate as many points, and if that's 4 bonus point wins to get number 1 seed, it's extremely advantageous, because then you have a home run through to the final. And that's the key to the success. Like any of knockout stages with rugby, having a home venue significantly increases your chance of winning. Um, on the production, like I agree with you. Like when Sky had it, it was amazing, and that was largely because of the format itself. The home and away format is great because from a supporter standpoint, if you think about Munster going and playing Bath, there is a rivalry there. They get to know each other. The Munster fans then host the Bath fans coming back. That's what rugby's about, and I just think it's a shame that we don't have that return fixture. I love that, and it was so challenging getting out of that group of six. Like one loss could prevent you. One home loss starting off the competition, you'd be thinking we're probably not going to get out of our group now. Whereas now, with this current format, one win can be enough to get you out of the group. And then look, you can get a little bit lucky going into the final 16 and quarter final. But as we've seen with the likes of La Rochelle, if you don't finish high up the seedings, to have to play the last 16 game away from home, and we saw it with Munster last year, to then go on the road within a week, it is really, really tough to put together those back-to-back performances. And then just from a production side, like obviously I'm working with Premier this weekend. You know, they're working out of Ireland, Northern Ireland, Wales, Scotland, England, France, Italy, South Africa. And they're covering all 12 games. It's a ginormous production. And I agree with you on last year. Like cracking that English market is tough, but it's a really competitive price point, and it's important. I'm not just saying this as a Premier.
You'd be mad not to.
No, but like I think it's priced at between £12 and £16 a month. And I know, look, there's huge frustration out there that for an English supporter, you've got to pay a subscription for TNT. They follow the soccer. They've got to pay for Sky.
Just so fractured.
It's never ending,
Yeah.
but it is a competitive package. And it's also that having familiar faces for them, like having the likes of Lawrence Delalio, Andy Good,
in Madigan.
But that's really important, and that's something that Premier have done well. But it's a challenge covering this competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So, but look, it does still heat up when we get to last 16. Is still a very good round where we'll see in all likelihood majority of home teams winning.
Yeah.
But quarterfinal round is incredible in this
Correct.
competition.
I know. Look, when it gets there, it gets there. There's no doubt. And before we get into having a closer look at the two games, Leinster Harlequins and Bath Munster, Jacques Nienaber is sort of not quite dominated, but like he's just been bubbling away as a big talking point in Irish rugby since he gave that interview to Sun Sport a few days out from
Supersport.
the Supersport. Where did I get Sun Sport from?
I don't know. Were you reading The Sun upstairs?
No. Supersport. What Goes on Tour show hosted by Matt Pearce. This was a couple of days out from the South Africa game, and Jacques not happy with the coverage of it necessarily, or was asked about it again in his Monday press conference this week. So it's kind of continued on, like I said, across the 13 days or so. Let's start with the interview he gave originally, because I think that's the fairest point to start, and I have a clip of it. So Matt Pearce is the host of this Supersport show, which I hadn't seen before, but the show is called What Goes on Tour. And basically, he seems to be very much ensconced with the team, and he travels around to their various cities where the matches are on. And so I would presume it made perfect sense when he was in Dublin to send a text to Jacques Nienaber, who he seemed, very good on good terms with, and Jacques routinely referred to him in the 22 or 3 minute interview on a first name. It was Matt this and Matt that, and they seemed to have a good rapport. And I would emphasise, like, the vast majority of this interview is absolutely fine and like good. It's interesting. He talks about his role with Leo Cullen. He's very complimentary of Leo. They get into, and what's your job title? And, he's laughing about how he told him, you can call me physio, I don't care. And, similar working relationship to Razzie, and talked about working with great players at Leinster, complimentary about the club, working with the likes of Geordie Barrett. He was asked about Barrett and Rico Ioane. Fascinating to get chance to see what makes them tick and how they see the game totally different to South African mindsets, and where else would I get a chance to do that, and goes into his history with Razzie and all of that kind of stuff. Leinster, how important was it to win the RC? Orgy Steinman, 50 caps this weekend, tell us about him. It's that kind of not a softball interview, it's a really interesting chat, two people comfortable with each other, but it is bookended by two Springbok questions, which seem to have caused all the kind of trouble. So we'll play them both, so nobody can accuse anybody of misquoting anyone. Here is Nienaber first. This is almost the first kind of question in the interview, and there's a degree of like, so you're in Dublin, how are things?
No, Matt, the island life is it's freezing currently. No, it's been good. Definitely, obviously a big decision to leave the box. But for me personally, like I mentioned back in the day, it's where I felt I needed to go in terms of having more time with my family, and that's what's happening. So in that sense, it's exactly where I want to be in terms of being a little bit more time with my family, enjoy the club, enjoy the Dublin. Dublin's a great place. The Irish are good people, great people. And it's a good club, a club that challenges you. And there's a lot of internationals within the club, so they keep you on your toes from a rugby point of view. But obviously one will always miss. I miss the box. I miss the family. I miss the coaches, miss the player, the interactions. It's good to see them doing well. So happy where I am. Really enjoy Dublin. Club's been phenomenal, but still miss South Africa and go back often as much as I can.
So then it's into all the stuff I mentioned around Leinster and his career in Dublin, and then it finishes with one final question on future, long to medium term.
Jacques, I know your immediate future remains with Leinster. Dare we ask, or is it unfair to ask sort of medium and longer term plans? I know you've been incredibly grateful for the journey you've had in rugby so far.
Yeah, Matt. No, I extended with a year with the club, and I'm so my contract's up to the end of the season 2027, the domestic season. So I'll be out of contract, but the start of the international season in the Southern Hemisphere just starts after that. So you never know how things work out. And you know what, Matt, you plan life. You know, when myself and Rassie came over in 2016, our plan was to get a passport, and the kids is going to settle here. That was the idea. And then maybe if we're relevant enough or good enough, we will return when we're a little bit older. So we thought maybe for the 2023 or this 2027 World Cup, if we're good enough. But then life happens, you know. Anthony Foley passed away, and you realize that, yeah, you've got all these plans and all these future plans. But actually all you have is now, the time you have now. So listen, very grateful where I'm. Would I like to love? Like I said, I miss the Springboks. I really miss the group, and one never knows, you know. Life will take care of itself.
So that was it. They were the two answers on his future, or Springboks, Leinster. You took a fairly strong view against this. You thought this was out of order, Rud.
Yeah. The other thing, well, there's two other things I'd know. Because look, Jacques Nienaber is a very experienced head coach who has done countless press conferences, understands the power of the message and all the things that go around it. He did the interview at the Springboks team hotel, which is about a kilometre from Leinster's HQ. I think it would have sent a much stronger message had he done it in Leinster HQ wearing Leinster attire. And the other thing I would say during it, he routinely referred to South Africa as we and us, and as Leinster as they, which I thought was very strange. I think if you listen to his second answer in particular, Matt Pearce asks him about his medium-term plans. It's him who brings up going back to the Springboks. And this is long being held as the suspicion that this was the thing. He was going to come over for 4 years and go back for the World Cup. I think it's going to happen. I've heard people who've been talking to people within the camp. They expect it to happen. Part of it is he's on a very good salary in Leinster, and absolutely no problem come over and make as much money as you can here and get results and go back. But when the results aren't great, and I've always wondered about the strategic decision to bring him in from an IRFU Ireland perspective, not Leinster. If you're looking at Leinster in isolation, bringing in a World Cup winning head coach was an interesting decision that we've talked about in terms of, you know, their playing identity and what they sacrifice. But I understand that. But from David Humphrey's point of view, to bring in a coach who had completely ripped up the way that they play, which was at the time so aligned with Ireland, and gone a completely different emphasis when Ireland weren't shifting that same emphasis, I think was a I think a bad strategic decision to allow that to happen. So that's happened. They've taken that decision, and now they know. They know with a fair degree of confidence that he will take all of what he's learned in the next 2 years, as well as the last 2 years, and bring it back to the world champions who are already speeding away from the pack. I just don't see why that's tenable from Irish rugby's point of view. The results haven't been particularly brilliant anyway. I mean, Leinster at the moment have had a really poor start to the season. Yes, they could turn it around, and he remains an excellent coach. But when you bring it all together, and then he gives that interview where he basically indicates that he will be going home, if he was a partner in a law firm who was going to another law firm, he'd be put on gardening leave straight away. So I think today's draw has taken the heat out of it somewhat, because South Africa are no longer really in Ireland's line of sight for the World Cup, and if they get to a final and face South Africa, we can worry about that then. So it's probably just taking the sting out of it a little bit. But I thought it was a poor decision by him to give the interview in the way that he did, then to say what he did, and now he's been claiming he's been taken out of context, when I was the first one to report on it because I watched the full interview and I picked the most interesting and relevant points to an Irish audience, but I quoted him in full and gave the background. I think he's now setting it up so when that he goes back, he goes, well, the Irish media forced me out. And that's the playbook. And the other thing is, we've been down this road before, because his close friend and boss, or former boss, Rassie Erasmus, and him came over to Munster. They swore blind that they weren't going back, and then they went back. So I almost think that he's trying to engineer a way out now, although I don't know why he would have signed the contract. But by doing that interview, I presume it's gone down badly in Leinster. In fact, I know it's gone down badly in Leinster. I wonder what the Irish players think as they go in front of him now. Maybe he'll turn it into another us against the world. Certainly Dan Sheehan's comments today suggest they're going for another us against the world. But I just don't see how his position is particularly tenable at the moment. And I think Leinster need a big change anyway. So
when you say it's gone down badly at Leinster,
yeah,
the dressing room,
I'd say more in the hierarchy.
Okay.
I think people would be a bit miffed at the fact. I wonder if did he get permission for the interview? Did he clear it with this? Doing it in the South African hotel, all that sort of stuff. I think it's just it's a bad look. And then to bring up that stuff himself rather than. If Matt Pearce was questioning him, are you coming back? Are you coming back? And he broke under questioning, fair enough. But he walked himself into it. And as I say, he is an experienced communicator. He's well able to not answer a question when it's put to him if he doesn't want to answer it. I drove 5 hours from Bordeaux to Nantes to Bordeaux to ask him about Ireland after they played Romania at the World Cup. They were playing Ireland the following week, and he was like, I'm only focused on today's game. I'm not talking about Ireland today. He is well able to get himself out of a question.
Yeah.
He was sending a message with his interview, and then Rassie, it goes out just before Rassie walks in to do the press conference. So then Rassie comes in and he uses it as a football that he can a grenade that he can launch into the Ireland camp. Andy Farrell ends up being being asked about it as well. So it becomes a massive story in the build up to Ireland South Africa. So I'll
let you back in.
Go on.
I'll give us Rassie's response on Monday, but before we do that, Ian, your reaction to the interview? Did you former player, you'd have that sense of whether they might not like the love of it, like the look of it? What did you make of what he said?
Yeah, I think first off, it's kind of a lesson in PR, and I think if Jacques had his time again, would he have done this interview? I think the answer would probably be no. Who was this interview for? This interview, in my view, was for people back in South Africa. I don't think he foresaw this interview being picked up as much as it has been by the media here in particular. I think what's important from my standpoint is to kind of add a bit of flavour to Jacques, and that he is bought in here, right? So I was at a dinner, a main fundraising dinner for Blackrock Rugby Club, and the main way that they fund the first team and the women's team. He spoke at that last year and attended it again this year. Like, there's no need for him to do that. And like, if you're not fully bought in here, I don't think you'd be putting yourself out there. He's gone into the schools, he's coached there. I do believe that he's fully bought in. I also think he's an amazing coach. Like, you think back to when Leinster were really purring last year through the knockouts of Europe, when they thumped Glasgow, thumped Harlequins. The defence was unstoppable. And at one stage I was thinking, is anyone going to score against this Leinster defence? Because the players were able to execute the system that he completely believes in. And it's a challenge for him getting this team back to that. And it's far from ideal that the Irish defensive system is different to the Leinster one. And I'd be a big advocate, and I've said it multiple times, that for Ireland to win the World Cup, I think they need to have a higher press in that rush defence. And I think he's the best person to do it. Thinking of succession plans, if Leo was to step away at some stage, I thought that, like, when I originally heard that interview and read Rudd's article, I was disappointed, because I was like thinking, well, I thought he could potentially be the future head coach for Leinster, and I would have been happy with that. It didn't give you the warm fuzzies that he could be that guy. But that also changes. And then as a player perspective, one thing I will say about rugby, you'd be shocked at how much post a game coaches share information with each other. They will, like, you'll have attack coaches telling the defense coach of the other team, oh, this is what we were trying to do. We were trying to pin you back in your corner and force you to play from deep. And this is the system we're doing at the moment. And rugby's just so fast moving that teams, not that they're helping each other out, but they're sharing the information in the hope that they're going to get information back, that's then going to improve them the following week. And when the teams meet each other again in 6 months' time, the game's moved on so swiftly that, you know, the information that you'd think, and I've thought it at times, why are we giving that away? We should be holding on to that. The game just moves on so quickly. So I can see where Rudd's coming from totally, and it's not a good PR story, but I do believe that he's fully bought in, and I think the players have his total support. Like, the guys love him in there.
Here's what he said then on Monday, this week's press conference. So I think initially he was asked about it, and it kind of went from there, and that's the gist, isn't it? So here he is on Monday. It was brought up to him, and he was more than happy to talk about it.
No, I said my contract with Leinster is until the end of this 2027 season. Everybody knows that. And then the question was, so what then? So I said, and that's where the Anthony story come up. I said, then I don't know. I can't tell you what happens then. And that is what I said. Listen, I don't know. I literally... If I'm, I can't tell you what's going to happen after that. I know that I'm the sole provider of my family. So if my contract expires with Leinster, which I enjoy working with, which I love, that's why I extended my contract. But if my contract finished on whenever it's June or July 2027, whatever then is up, that's the best for me to provide for my family, and that suits my family. I will definitely look at that, because I have to provide for my family. There's nobody else that provides for my family. My wife's not working. She can't work as a physio in Ireland, because it's a job that is there's enough physios here. So it's on the red list or whatever they call it. She can't. She's just dependent on me. My two kids are studying. They're not working. So I must actually get a job. So hopefully I get a job after my contract expires with Leinster.
So, you know, he's coming out punchy enough there, to say the least. I'm sort of torn on it.
Yeah.
I can see where you're coming from. I genuinely can. And then I can, you know, I thought a lot of what he said in the interview was very committed to Leinster, and at the same time, and I think it's possible to hold both at the same time, being almost just mature enough, honest enough, grown up enough to say, but like, I'm South African. When my contract finishes here, I'm available. It may happen, but I think he's been sincere when he says I don't know. I do think he wants it to happen. In terms of like a come and get me plea, I'd say he talks to Razzie 5 times a week, and he was probably just in the hotel with Razzie. I don't really think he needs to go through Matt Pearce and make a public come and get me plea. I felt it was just a fairly, I'm being pretty honest with you, I do think it was absolutely with a South African audience in mind. The context of the show is we're on tour. It's a catch up with different South Africans. We go around different cities. Jacques Nienaber is such a big part of their past. So, you know, he's going to talk with that affection for them. But I certainly didn't come away, put it this way, I didn't come away thinking, this guy's not trying to leg at Leinster. And I don't think you're suggesting that, by the way.
No.
But I didn't think, oh, he's just on a jolly. I don't think he's here on some intel mission. I mean, I'm not sure they need much intel on us, to be honest. You know, I don't think we're number one in their we're scared of list. If he was over in Auckland, then maybe, or in France. I think it's the salary. I think it's spending 50 nights away from home as opposed to 150 nights away from home. That sort of tallies with me. You know, between World Cups, it's a big thing to get back with your family. And I just sort of think in this, you know, mercenary world, especially South African rugby, they move around all over the world. I think there is a degree of him almost just being too grown up about the situation. Almost too, like, because he could give you the bullshit. He could give you the, oh, Matt, I love Leinster. I couldn't even think about something else. I had a great time in South Africa. There is a degree of, yeah, look, it's possible I will go back someday. But I don't think he needed Matt Pearce's show to get to Rassie. You know that kind of way?
He had lunch with Rassie.
Yeah, so it's not like
But that makes it even. I think that makes it even worse. Like, why do this to yourself? Why put yourself through this? Why make life so difficult?
I think he was very relaxed with this guy. I think there was an intimacy and almost he maybe said too much.
South Africa use YouTube in team meetings all the time. He's a very au fait technical person. He knows that this show goes on YouTube. He watches it on YouTube. He knows that the rugby world is global.
Do you think he thought? Do you think he just thought they won't take offence? Like, my contract's till 27. They must know it's done.
I don't know what his motivations were, but I think it put him on shaky ground. I think he's on shaky enough ground already with Leinster because I know that they nilled, you know, the Glasgow and Harlequins, but Northampton was a disaster defensively. He then disowned it. He washed his hands of it like Pontius Pilate, and then said he had no. He was just the defence coach. Then he comes out with Matt Pearce and says, "Oh, I run the rugby program."
More of a problem with that.
Well, that's the other hand of it. Like, so this guy isn't. Look, the players like him. They do swear by what he's doing, so you have to take that massively into account. But the results have not been fantastic, and I do think that while I don't know if I agree with Ian in terms of this is the way Leinster have to go, because I don't think it suits Leinster particularly. I think it's a system that's built particularly for. I mean, with South Africa, he almost has the perfect blend of power forwards and the quickest wingers in the world, and then generally a very intelligent fullback making really good decisions, like this midfield that's just perfectly built to defend the way he wants to defend. I think when Leinster were at their best, it was under Stuart Lancaster playing that flowing, attacking rugby. That was the Leinster way. That was the Leinster identity. I think someone like Noel McNamara would be a far better fit in terms of a senior coach for Leinster. He probably wasn't ready when Nienaber was available. But I would like Leinster's next move in the post-Nienaber era, 2027, when he goes back to South Africa, as I fully expect to happen. I think back towards someone who came from Leinster initially, has gone out into the world and learned an awful lot about attacking rugby with Bordeaux, because Bordeaux, a flowing attacking team with incredible pace on the wings and the strengths that Irish teams don't have. Or even Toulouse, the two best teams that everyone expects to win this tournament, they're based on, yes, they're very good defences, but they are attacking, they score heavily. And I think the Leinster way is to do that. And they've done this deal with the South African way, and it hasn't gotten them results. So you have the results part, and yes, you could turn that around this year, although it started very badly. And then you have the strategic RFU part of the fact that the way they're going is driving a wedge between Leinster and Ireland, when Ireland are still picking massively from Leinster. So I don't think that's a good fit either. And then there's the PR or the strategic decision to do that interview.
So the interview is more the cherry on top of a.
I think it's the straw that breaks the camel's back.
Okay, but if everything else was going well, the interview, you'd be like,
well, he's in a stronger position, but I don't think he's in a particularly strong position at the moment.
I mean, on the hotel thing, like, again, I didn't know it was at the hotel until you'd said it, but like, it's not. I should just say for the listeners, it's not like if you open the video. They're sitting outside in a nondescript hotel. It looks very nice and everything, but it's not like you've
-2.
Yeah, but it's not like you've South Africans walking around in the background giving the thumbs up and like big banners and like I'm in Team South Africa. You know, it's not a statement of I'm with the team in the hotel. They don't reference.
He's not wearing a box polo shirt.
He's not.
So.
No,
He drew a line somewhere.
He's in a fashionable jacket and everything. I take the point about doing it from Leinster HQ. I don't know. There's for sure. Ian, do you want to you give us a very final word on it then? If you think it's going to have any real repercussions in the dressing room, anything strike you about what we've said, and we'll push on.
Yeah, like I'd echo what Rudd has said as regards, you know, is it aligned with the Leinster brand? And Not necessarily, and I'd agree with that. But what I'd say is it's the direction the game has gone in, and Stuart Lancaster, Joe Schmidt, they had great success in like pre-planned power plays off scrum and line out, where you're looking to break a team down over 3-4 phases, and that was kind of the crux of large parts of those game plans. The way the game has moved on now, it's about having an aggressive defense, being excellent in the kick contest, creating breaking ball, having a really strong maul scrum, and then as regards attacking, and I'd echo what he's saying about Noah McNamara, it's having a team that attacks really well on transition when they get those turnovers, when they win the ball in the air. But it's not necessarily how you attack off scrum and line out the way it was 5-10 years ago. So it's how you dovetail with that. But look, I think this is my view is I think it's a bit of a storm in a teacup. I think this is one that will go away with good performances. If Leinster shift 30 against Quins, which I don't think is going to happen, and they lose against Leicester, maybe this turns into a bigger story. But I don't think that's going to have. I don't think that's going to be how it plays out.
Okay. Well, look, let's finish off on Leinster then. So they have Harlequins, and then it's Leicester away. The following, I think it's Friday, isn't it? Yeah. Yep. So to get a sense of where they are, obviously they beat Quinn 62-0 last season. In terms of injuries, Robbie Henshaw, hamstring strain, Osborne and Baird obviously injured, Hugo Keenan still injured, Will Connors injured, James Ryan suspended, Joe McCarthy is back in the mix. Rico Ioane, available for selection, has arrived, is training away. You take the form lines of both. Harlequins 8th of 10 in the Premiership, 2 wins from 6. Now equally, Leinster have played 6 and only won 3. You were at Rodney Parade on Friday. It was far from convincing again from Leinster, albeit maybe second string ish, but still far from convincing. So they don't really arrive into this game in great form. This really, to kind of really finish off on the Nienaber thing, this really is it. Like, if this thing doesn't start to click this year, they may decide to go their separate ways at the end of the summer. Like, I've talked to several former Leinster players, and there definitely is, I think the fans feel it as well, there is a disquiet about this change in emphasis. There is a sense that Leinster, we, as it's talked about, we are a backline club. We are an attacking club. We're a running rugby club. And I know you're talking about how rugby has changed, but I think this Nienaber shift, it's a acceptable once we win kind of a feeling out there. So this season feels crucial. How well set up are they, do you think, to win the Champions Cup this season?
Yeah, I think starting off from the game against Dragons, there's still a few areas of concern that have continued on from the Munster loss. Their discipline was poor. Like, if you're playing a side like the Dragons, you're giving away 17 penalties. That's simply not good enough. And where the penalties were being given away were inexcusable. Like, players being offside, not rolling away. There was a multitude across the game, and that allowed the Dragons access. If you're playing a side like Leicester in Welford Road and you give 17 penalties away, you're not winning that game. You're not beating Bayonne either. So, look, with a good side like Leinster, when you have an indisciplined performance, usually you see a reaction, and within the space of a week, they will be able to turn things around. There's a feeling that the Leinster season hasn't got going yet. The Munster game came, arguably too early in the season. That's not when Leinster are looking to peak. Leinster's focus every year is to win the Champions Cup, number one, and they are looking to peak later in the season. But they know how important it is to accumulate points, and they will want to significantly get momentum into their season against Harlequins, and they will be looking to hose Harlequins down. There's no two ways about it. They want to put in a statement performance this weekend. And even for a player like Rico Ioane, I don't know if he's going to be starting, but I'd imagine he'll be in the 23. He's going to want to put down a statement performance. There's been a lot said, in the media, past players. This guy's a quality rugby player, and he is going to want to do his talking with his rugby performance, and I hope we see him step up at the weekend, the same way that I hope that we see every signing from overseas being successful. So,
yeah, and what's your and sorry to interrupt. And in broad terms, how equipped do you feel they are this season versus the last couple of years to win the Champions Cup?
They're right at the top table. Top side in the UK, or sorry, in England by far and away is Bath, and I think they have the squad to compete into the semi final. The French teams are going to be really strong again. The two best for me at the moment, Toulouse are clear number one. Toulon are right up there. I think they're coming third in the top 14. Bordeaux are going to be good again. I don't think they're as strong as they were last year. They've struggled a little bit in the top 14. La Rochelle will have a big performance in them, but I don't think they've got the squad depth to see another star on the jersey. And then the South African sides, like the Stormers have really impressed me in the URC this year. Like that performance against Munster at the weekend, they thrashed Leinster early in the season, albeit against the second string side. If those teams can get the fixtures going their way in the knockout stages, they can definitely compete deep into the competition. But I still have Leinster number 1 and 2. I'd have Toulouse number 1. I think they're rightly favourites for the competition, and I think if Leinster can get a momentum into it, look, they've such a chip on their shoulder that can be a real driver, and maybe this is the year it clicks.
Yeah, Rud, you alluded to Don Sheehan doing the media and the build-up, and he kind of echoed the line that people don't really like them. I don't care what people think or about the outside. If everyone loved us, it'd be kind of weird. There is that sort of hatred towards us, so that is kind of copy and paste in May of last season. Are you as confident in them as Ian that they're in that kind of 1-2 bracket?
I think, yeah. Either you or Will asked me about 6 weeks ago who's going to win the European Cup, just as we were previewing the season, and I said Leinster, and that was before they started off the season so poorly. My confidence has been knocked. My confidence in them has been knocked by how they've started the season, and I know they haven't had their first choice available, but the strength of Leinster was always how well they played, regardless of who was on the pitch, and the error count, the discipline, the tactical stuff that's going awry for them. Making heavy weather of the Dragons away. Look, the Dragons did well on Friday, but their South Africa tour was a bit of a disaster. All the stuff that I was hearing towards the end of last season, you kind of parked it and went away for the summer and came back, and they just how many lines did they have? Was it 14 or 15 lines? You can gosh, they'll reset and it'll be fine, but the evidence is yet to show us that it is fine, that they've healed the divisions within their squad and all that sort of stuff. So I think it's hard for the internationals the way the season has been. Like the Lions, I don't think the team that went to South Africa, the Ireland tourists and the Lions really trained together for most of pre-season. So even to try and get that squad harmony has been very difficult. But I still expect them to certainly win their first 2 games against English opposition. Leicester away, that's probably a tougher game than it has been for the last couple of times they've had to go there because they've had so little time. La Rochelle at home, I just don't think La Rochelle are at the point they were at before. Bayonne away is tough. I mean, they can get up for any game, La Rochelle, and Rog will have them primed for it. And then Bayonne away is a really tough fixture. Bayonne are one of those French top 14 teams a place you don't really want to go if needing a result. They're benefiting as well. Stormers are in their pool, so whereas Munster have Edinburgh as the other URC team who they don't play, Stormers will take points off opponents as well, so that will benefit Leinster. So Leinster, the route is there, and they're going to, the omens are good. They're going back to Bilbao where they won it the last time, so I'm sure they'll build a big team. It sounds like they're quite happy to lean into that us against the world, nobody likes us, we don't care kind of thing, and that can be powerful. I wouldn't be backing them to win it anymore based on what I've seen so far, but at the same time, I think they're still top 2 or 3.
Okay. That's 5:30 on Saturday at the Aviva. 8 o'clock, Bath against Munster, Saturday evening. Now, this one is tasty. We're talking about the health of the tournament and you can pick your games. This one just jumps off the page. Obviously, Johan van Graan's Bath, Premiership champions, Challenge Cup champions. Just a serious list of names. I mean, this salary cap in the Premiership, it's working a treat. So in Munster's pool, they have Bath away, they'll have Castres at home, they'll have Gloucester at home, and then Toulon away in the new year. So they'll be at home to Gloucester next week, away to Bath this week, and then Toulon and Castres in the new year. I guess, but for the weekend, you'd be inclined to say Munster's form really good. They lost to the Stormers. They had both won 6 each, and the Stormers prevailed. We'll circle back to that game in a moment. But you'd say Munster in kind of great shape. Bath, Ian, like the Rec, this great old stadium, heavy pitch. Like I said, their form line at the moment is good. They've one loss in 6 outings, Bath, so they've picked up where they left off last season, really. And you're talking Underhill, Ollie Lawrence, Henry Arundel, Charlie Ewells, Joe Cocasigna, Santi Carreras, Finn Russell at 10 with Ben Spencer alongside him. In the scrum, they have Thomas Dutoy, I think, or Will Stewart. They can pick both. And we'll come to Munster in the scrum in a second. So, like, this is a real where are you Munster kind of an afternoon. It's not must win for them, although Toulon and New Year is not easy either. So they probably don't want to lose both their away matches if at all possible. Therefore, the big circle around this one. This is going to be tasty.
Yeah, I think Munster will beat Cast and Gloucester at home. I don't think they win either away game. Toulon are particularly good at home, and Bath are formidable, as we're going to see at the weekend. You save the best to last and the most important for last. It's not necessarily Finn Russell, but it is Thomas the Tank and Will Stewart in the front row.
Hoping we could avoid a scrum discussion on the podcast today.
But. Well, unfortunately, we're there because Bath played Saris at the weekend, and they seriously got one up on them in the scrum. And you know, the Saris went 14-0 up, and Bath had to work really hard to get themselves back into the game. The way they did that, they won the aerial contest, they won at scrum time, and they got their maul going. 2 tries at maul time. If you look at how Munster lost against the Stormers at the weekend, you know, they were 21-5 up, had all the momentum into the game, and they make 5 key substitutions, and then their scrum gets on top, which was actually on top for large parts of the game. The Stormers one was, and then they really get their maul going, which is the foundation of their game, and they claw Munster back and ended up winning, you know, 28-21. So I think going into this game, you're kind of defying the data to think that Munster can beat them if you're looking at the nuts and bolts of it. But it's still Munster in the Champions Cup, and that's where the data doesn't necessarily tell you what's going to happen. So I think it's going to be a very physical game. You touched on it there. It is a heavy pitch this time of year.
It's a heavy pitch in May, let alone this time of year.
It's a cricket pitch in May.
Yeah. But it's beautiful, atmospheric. I love a game at the Rec. You know what I mean?
It is. Nice. It's a tough place to go,
yeah.
and I've certainly lost more times there than I've won. But I think Bath will win that game, and it would actually be a great result if Munster can get a bonus point out of that.
So
that's how I do it.
To your eye, are Munster susceptible to a lot of teams at scrum?
Yeah, they are.
John Dobson had very interesting comments to Rudd, actually, in the paper, if you want to read the full article. So he's a very engaging character, isn't he?
He's great.
Yeah, he's good. Because I saw the interview you did with him on Premier as well, and he came over to you, and Alan Quinlan was there, and just very... couldn't but like him, you know.
It was like, even we asked him who's going to win this next game up, Sharks,
yeah.
Connacht. He goes, Connacht will win that. Their attack's great.
I know. Afterwards, I was thinking, why did I not lump on the way he just said it? He was right. So he said, very interesting thing. Our two best props weren't even out there. It's crazy what's going on with scrum culture in South African rugby. And here's the interesting part. I don't know if it's great for rugby though. You can just sit in the coach's box on your own scrum and push a button and say, give us a penalty. And he sort of said there's an endless line of athletes who can do that in a scrum. So Matt Williams, I sent this on to Matt, who'd nod approvingly. I don't know if this is great for rugby. You can just sit in the box and say, grand, give us a penalty.
And the Stormers wouldn't be considered the strongest scrummaging of. Maybe that's why he's thinking it's not such a good thing. So when he comes against the other ones, it might be more tricky.
This is how we used to talk about red cards. Now you lose the first 2 scrums, you'll be thinking, the game's gone.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you only have to go back to the 2019 World Cup final and South Africa scrummed England off the park. It's not. It comes around. It kind of goes away when it's not a big factor in games, and then suddenly it's, especially when it's 2 games in a row. You know, I was the only national journalist at the game on Saturday, so I basically got a one-on-one with Dobson. But previous to that, Tyg Byrne was in, and I asked him, was it a bit deja vu out there? And he just looked at me, that's a loaded question.
Ooh.
Which it wasn't really.
He was very, I don't know if you saw it when you were, even when, they applaud each other off.
Yeah.
He was so cranky.
Yeah.
He was like, I've never seen Tyg Byrne like this. He was like, come on, to his own players, let's just get this over with kind of thing. He was just thoroughly fed up.
Well, like, you want to see the nice things I was writing about Munster at half time, because I was, they were that far ahead that the report was pretty much written and then obviously got scrapped and rewritten. Because it looked like, and I'd interviewed McMillan last week as well, so I was probably pretty positively disposed to the changes he's making. He's a very impressive guy.
Yeah.
And I still think a lot of that still obviously holds. The one thing that'll give them a lot of confidence this week is that John Klein is back. So when you have John Klein starting and Edwin Adogbo on the bench, you've two really meaty, scrummaging tight head locks, which they didn't have last week. It was Feeney and Wycherley and Thomas Ahern, who was excellent in the line out, but they wouldn't have Klein's a tight head lock from the Springboks, and Adogbo has that profile as well. That will help. Michael Alalatoa, who's not the greatest scrummager in the world, but is a massively experienced tight head. At the same time, he'll come in instead of Ronan Fox, who was an academy player who got a bit schooled last weekend, which is a rite of passage for any young tight head. So they will be stronger this week, but they'd have to be, because Johan van Graan's going to be pressing that button. They have a South African coach. They have that mindset towards the scrum, and they have arguably the best tight head in the world in Thomas Dutoy, who actually spent a couple of months under Razzie at Munster back in his career. So they'll be looking to press that button and win the penalties. But if Munster can just get parity and hold their own, they're in it. Like Ian's right, they're not as good as Bath at the moment. But I see a very, very good team there. I thought some of the rugby they played in the first half against the Stormers was excellent. Yeah. And what McMillan focused on the most was we were on top and we didn't make it pay. We were 21-6 up, but we should have been much further ahead. We had loads of chances we left behind. Yeah. They keep kicking the ball away on penalty advantage. Casey and Crowley, and that's really frustrating. Like they're not accurate kicks. They're kind of they're wasting penalty advantage at times. But when they click, they're very well coached. Their attack, Mike Prendergast has really good attack plans for them. Some of their face play stuff is very good, and they look like they're in that game. They looked incredibly confident, and they're all on the same page. A year ago, they were in disarray going into Europe. And even last year, when they were in disarray, they still managed to pull out some big results. I do think they're in a much better place under a much better coach. And there's a lot to like about them, but this is a real test of where they are.
Going to have to get Mick Galway in a tractor outside the wreck somehow.
Absolutely.
Ian, say you're planning a game as a 10, and the assumption is we're in trouble at scrum against this lot. What can you do tactically, if anything, to minimise the number of scrums in a game? If the other team are gagging for them as well.
It's really difficult. And the way the game is set up, like you touched on it there, Rod, with the second rows. So like if you're deciding to pick bigger bodies in the second row, that's going to narrow up your attack, as opposed to being able to pick the likes of a Hearn, who's a ball player, like a kind of back row. The way the laws are at the breakdown, that's going to shorten up your attack as well, because if you're not winning the space immediately, you're going to be turned over. Kick contest, 1 in 3 kick contests now results in a scrum.
Yeah, that is a spectacle issue, but yeah, it's impossible not to have knock-ons and kicks.
Yeah, so are you going to change your kick strategy and decide to kick long and fill the field and not have aerial contests? Is one way of doing it, and then avoiding going high in the phase count is another way of reducing the amount of scrums that are going to be in the pitch. So you get to phase 5, 6, or 7, you put boot on ball.
Okay. Short number of phases, kick long.
Yeah, and you're also looking to de-risk your attack. So how do you de-risk your attack? You get to 20-meter rucks, midfield rucks. You come back to the short side, and it's shorter, sharper passing using blockers, as opposed to ball in air, longer passing. You're going to have knock-ons.
Okay.
That's, but it's very difficult to do. And you can end up kind of tying yourself up in knots, and maybe the scrum doesn't go as bad, but you end up with a pretty average game plan.
Yeah.
So one thing I'd say, just to echo kind of Rudd's point, I've probably been a little bit negative on Munster there. I totally agree. Like the way they kept that ball alive in the first half was really high quality. Three pre-planned moves, albeit one being a tap and go, but it's really well executed. Excellent move, scoring off a scrum in their own half, scoring within 2 phases, and then the try that they scored off line out, really good execution. It's pre-planned move. It's spotting a chink in the defense of the Stormers and saying, right, well, if we move quicker here, we're going to have mismatches. Coombs and Tyke Byrne did that. They beat the Stormers into the space. It all looked like it was going to plan. What was disappointing for me is you get to the 52nd minute, right? You're 21-6 up. You've got a maul effectively 5 meters out. And that's where Munster typically turn the screw. They score there, it's game over. Like the Stormers are simply not coming back, and you could easily go on and win that game by 30 points, regardless of what's coming off the bench for the Stormers. It went scrum penalty. The Stormers had maul dominance. They got penalty advantage. Coombs then gives away a pretty silly yellow card, one that he'd be very disappointed with, for tripping a player up. 7 points. They're now back into the game. I know 8 points down, 21 to 13. The restart, as we saw with Ireland against South Africa, you get yourself somewhat back into the game. What do you do at restart? They give away a penalty for taking a player out in the air. Then it's penalty at maul, penalty at scrum, penalty for not rolling away, penalty for being offside. Like that period of 15 minutes was as poor as we've seen from Munster in a long time.
Okay.
And they simply can't do that against Bath this weekend.
Okay. Really interesting game. 8 o'clock Saturday, right after Leinster Harlequins, 5:30 on Saturday. I've kind of gone over there. We don't really have time to do much on Challenge Cup. It's another thing to blame Jacques Nienaber for. It's torpedo this year. This guy. So Ulster play Racing. That's Friday night game, 8 o'clock. Ulster attack going very nicely in many respects. 47 points on the board against Benetton. There's a hope Racing will rotate a touch there at the bottom end of the top 14. And then Connacht are away to Ospreys Sunday. They beat the Sharks 44-17, albeit without Mac Hansen, who it seems is had surgery or is having surgery in his foot, and question mark over his availability for France on the 5th of February. So what do you want to say? I'll give you both a word on Connacht and Ulster if you want to say anything about these games. Connacht away to Ospreys Sunday and Ulster Racing on the Friday night, Ian.
Yeah, look, both teams are going to be looking to go deep into this competition, and they should do. Ulster have a very tough group. Like they kind of have a traditionally Champions Cup group. But look, that's good for viewership, good for getting supporters into the Affidea Stadium. Really impressed with Connacht at the weekend. I felt that performance was coming. They had a quite disjointed run, but we're getting close to a big performance in that first block of games where they had one game called off. But for me, the balance and the key area of growth for them is just having the balance of not playing too high into the phase count. Their attack is beginning to click. Like we saw some really nice interplay with backs and forwards, keeping the ball alive. They found a goal kicker in Sean Nocton, something they haven't had for a very long time. He kicked 8 from 8 at the weekend, and a lot of them weren't easy kicks. So that's a big bonus for them, and maybe that's kind of going to kickstart their season, and they'll start projecting up the league table, and they should, both Ulster and Connacht should come through their group comfortably, and then it's really about how far you can go into the competition.
Okay, both through comfortably.
Yeah, but while managing resources so that to be fresh for big results over Christmas, because really what they want to use is their squad so that they can use these breaks to they get all the URC results they need to be in the other competition next year, because it's a managing both. You want to get home advantage. Like the French often send second teams to away games in the Challenge Cup, if not their home games. So you really should be trying to get top seeding home for as long as possible, a bit of cash, but also balance that with your squad. And yeah, I think Postlethwaite is one just from last weekend that everyone needs to be keeping an eye out on, because Ian would have played with him. I think he has the potential to really burst into that Ireland scene just based on what we're seeing at the moment, and in an area that I think Ireland needs a bit of fresh blood.
Okay, very good. We'll come back to him. Fellas, we are out of time. Ian Madigan, thanks very much.
Yeah, always a pleasure, Joe.
Cheers. Rory O'Connor, thank you.
Cheers, guys.